Welcome, Andy and Kim, to today's Internet Weather. We'll be taking a look at some of the interesting ports for this week. I will be starting with the top 10 most ports for this week. At the top, we have 23 TCP, which is Telnet. I'll skip over number 2, which is AT Echo Reply, and number 3 would be 1433 MS-SQL. And at 5 and 6, we have 2 ports which jumped from last week a position this week. The fifth position would be 445 TCP, which is SMB. And number 6 is 555 TCP, which is ADP port, followed by AT TCP 3389 for RDP. Number 9 at 22 is SSH, and number 10, 81, which is sometimes used as alternate port. I'll be talking a little bit more about this one as we go through. Okay, moving on to top sources probing this one. Here, again, we are only listing about the top 10 sources being probed here. The way the table works is what's the rank for the top ports last week and how much they changed for this week. There are not many surprises in the sense compared to the last few weeks. The top 5 ports seems to be at the same positions with nothing has been changed at their positions. The first port is 445, second is 23, 1433, and all those lists. But I would like to touch base with the ports with the red arrows, especially the 23 TCP, which is for Telnet, number 3, 1433 for SMB, 555 TCP, and 81 TCP. Okay, the first one I'll be looking at is a 1433 TCP. We all know the registered service with this port is Microsoft SQL Server. Here, I'm showing you the last 90 days from our graphical interface of the common backbone traffic. What we are seeing is, with respect to the traffic volume, how many scanners or maybe scan sources are seen on this port. Typically, this represents some sort of a botnet or malware kind of activity which have some sort of renewed interest or maybe what kind of traffic going on these ports. In this case, even though there are so many ports, but we are only picking up the top ports to see is there anything we could figure it out, maybe find out some sort of scanning happening on these ports. For the 90 days, it seems to be, the traffic seems to be okay, but when we stretched out for the 365 days, for the past 1 year for the specific port, you can see around some time actually, there's a huge jump from last year. And since then, the levels are at the heightened levels are there. Basically, if you see at the y-axis here, okay, there seems to be 18,000 scanners happening at each hour on this specific port. I tried to grab into a geographical locations. We captured all the sources on this specific port and tried to see what are the geographical locations these scanners are coming in from. When we plotted this, as you can see, it's heavily distributed in the sense very prominently seen from Asia Pac, Asia, some parts of North America and South America. I think from all these locations, scanning activity is happening all the time. So what is this scanning really happening? That is what we're trying to see from, we have some sort of honeypot. We observe certain number of ports and protocols. If anything, we can glean it from there. This data would be a little bit smaller compared to the common backbone we see, but still it gives you some indications or indicators what's really happening. In the past, I think looking back 90 days, so many, about 3,000 events have been noticed by our honeypot and the distribution based on that one. As you can see, when you're looking at, actually, there are a couple of things pointed out to me. Basically, we're looking at, there is evox, abort, and HNAP1. What are these is, while looking at actually the HVAC one seems to be related to one of the Linksys Moon router, I think, which has been popular about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It used to target basically routers. In this case, Linksys-based routers, sometimes other variants also targeted other routers. I believe in this case, this scanning activity is happening to look for some sort of IoT router-based devices for further propagation. These two requires, in this case, actually giving indications that the kind of activity is also happening. Before moving on to the next port, does anyone have any questions or comments about this port?
Quick question from me, Ganesh. The moonworm, how old is this worm?
I believe at least 5 years old, but even the moonworm is old, but there are so many variations of this worm in the sense the code, maybe the techniques have been used by so many latest botnets. For example, if you touch base any IoT-based botnet, they have some sort of coding or module to target DVRs, maybe DVRs as well as NVRs, or maybe some sort of home routers. In that sense, even the moonworm is an old one, but the techniques are being used constantly.
And this isn't the first time that we've seen scanning for home routers. It's very common. So make sure your home router is locked down properly, is my suggestion.
Yeah. Yes. I was going to mention that with the routers at home. So the firmware, are they up to date? Or, that kind of thing at home? Are people safeguard or using their firewalls that are, embedded in their home wireless network? Are they utilizing the firewall? Are they taking it down to play Xbox? So, a lot of people will just turn off their firewalls at home. So, and especially during this time, they will unlock it.
Being their IoT devices, it's not easy for regular users to basically update it. That's one of the reasons all of these IoT botnet authors are targeting these IoT-based devices. As you said, I think it should be patched and should be up to the levels so that these kind of attacks won't happen.
Yeah, it's make sure you don't have open ports on the internet that don't need to be there.
Right.
So like Kim said, make sure you've got a firewall either installed yourself, which I realize can be, somewhat complicated, but a lot of routers will come with a built-in firewall, and in order to poke a hole through it, you have to explicitly go into this configuration and say, I want port 22 open or something. That's very important, especially if you're using smart devices. If I go on Amazon and I buy a home camera, and I plug it into my network, the first thing that camera's going to do is it's going to tell my router, hey, I need to get out on this port, and I need to listen on this port and things like that. And your router needs to be able to say, okay, that's fine, except no, it's not. You're not accepting traffic on this port. You're going to go through me, and I'll tell you what can go through it.
Next port I want to talk about is 555 TCP. We talked about this port so many times, which is basically Android debug bridge port. Even though it's used by ADB port, I think it's also used by so many routers. Now you can see the theme here. It's also used by some small home routers for TR069 interface. In this case, actually, I've gone back 2 years back so that to show the difference between when we actually saw some sort of activity happening on this port, how the current levels are. When you look back, I think almost at the 2 years timeline back in time, there was a huge spike. I think that's the time there were some exploit actually found in TR069 with respect to ADB, and all the botnets at the time were actually leveraging this port, basically scanning for vulnerable devices. But as you can see, since a year or so, the scanning levels seems to be at the same levels, but they're sustained. That means there's still this port is open out there, and there are so many devices vulnerable to this specific port being open to the internet. Again, as you all said, I think the best advices hold true for this ADB port also, like secure the devices, harden the devices, as well as have the firewalls, different depth layers. Moving on to the next one, again, some data from based on our honeypot analysis. The strings over there is basically showing that it's looking for ADB vulnerabilities. This specific type of payload, they're looking for 555 TCP vulnerability for TL069. And there is some article about talking about how this is being exploited, and the link to the Trend microblog. But this has been going on for a while.
Earlier in the show, we talked about how if it's on the internet, it's going to get scanned. And I think this is just it's just more flame to that fire. So that'll get scanned. It's on the internet. We're seeing it.
And the last one I'll be talking about scanning happening on port 81 TCP. 81 TCP is most oftentimes it's used as an alternate HTTP port, but it's been associated with the Satori Dasan variant IoT botnet. Basically, it's the offshoot of Mirai botnet in the sense it reused the code from the Mirai and to target basically Dasan-based routers. In the sense, they have routers, some sort of DVRs as well as NVRs. I think, again, as you can see, if you look at all the three ports, the scanning seems to be geared towards some sort of IoT-based devices. Again, here, I was just showing the 1 year back, but the bulk of the scanning happened like a couple months ago, peaking about 22,000 scanners per hour. Since then, they're slowly tapering up, but still, it's one of the top ports we are seeing in our internet weather. And what does this look like from our honeypot analysis? There are about, I think, one port, the scanner seems to be spread across 84 different countries. The way we are looking at the honeypot data, I think that's the one I want to talk at the last. I think that's all I have today for the internet weather.
So this 81 is targeting the Dasan routers, you say?
Port 81 is actually alternate HTTP, but this is heavily used by Satori Dasan, which is, again, another IoT botnet. But this is heavily actually borrows code from Mirai-based botnet, which actually uses for DDoS activities, most of the things. It is so versatile. It can be used for crypto mining as well as DDoS attacks, all kind of nefarious activities.
Okay, I guess I was reading the slide before, so I was trying to understand it. The Satori Dasan, that it was whether it was targeting that particular router, or is it overall? It's just scanning the honeypot, looking for this this port to see if it's open.
Yeah, I think in this case, it's scanning for the port based on the responses. It tries to see which devices are vulnerable. But at the time, Satori is one botnet family, but the Satori Dasan is basically the variation of it is which is targeting at the time Dasan-based products. Like they have kind of routers as well as DVRs. Similar to any vendor, they have like different vendor products, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.